Thanks for tuning in to Operation Revenge. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now let's begin the story.
You ever feel invisible in a room full of people? That's what it felt like standing there with my mop in hand, sweat soaking through the back of my navy blue janitor's shirt, while 30 pairs of eyes laughed at me like I was a walking punchline. My name's Carla Whitmore. I'm 38 years old. I live in a small rented duplex off Route 17 in Springfield, Missouri, and right now I'm standing in the middle of Jensen Combat Arts, where the man smirking in the center of the mat happens to be my half-brother, Victor Jensen. "You guys want a real challenge?" Victor called out, pacing across the mat like a showman. "How about we let the janitor spar for fun?" That earned him a fresh round of laughter from the students, mostly guys in their 20s, full of testosterone and worship for the man they thought was a martial arts god. A few glanced at me, expecting me to laugh it off or scurry away like a mouse in a floodlight. But I didn't flinch. I just looked at him, calm, steady, and said, "If I win, you tell them the truth." That shut them up. Victor froze mid-step, his smirk faltering just enough for me to catch it. One of the students, a tall kid with a buzz cut and too much confidence, let out a half laugh. "Wait, you serious?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My eyes stayed locked on Victor, and something in my voice, something in the way I stood there, spine straight, hands still on my mop, told every single person in that dojo that this wasn't a joke. Victor forced a chuckle. "All right, sure. Let's see what the mop lady's got." He thought I was bluffing. He had no idea. I stepped onto the mat slowly, slipping off my work boots, careful not to make a show of it. My body still moved like it used to. Sharp, fluid. Years of discipline, of combat drills, of breaking down men twice his size without blinking. But Victor didn't know that. None of them did. They didn't know about the 14 years I gave the Marines, or the 4 years after that I spent as a close-quarters combat instructor, before I vanished from the family name entirely. They didn't know about the surgeries, the sleepless nights, the silence I chose instead of the war stories I could have worn like medals. To them, I was just a janitor. Victor raised his hands, bouncing slightly, cocky as ever. "Ready when you are." I dropped into stance, the one I hadn't used in years, but still felt like home. This wasn't about revenge. I didn't come back to humiliate him. I came back because the empire he built was a lie, and I was done letting him pretend otherwise. This wasn't about winning. It was about truth, and I never missed when I aimed for that. I didn't come back with a plan. Not at first. I'd spent 14 years in the Marines, most of them overseas. By the time I got out, the only place that still felt like home was our old house on Birchwood Drive, the one with the cracked porch and the crooked mailbox our dad never fixed. But when I pulled up that afternoon, duffel bag in the back seat and hope in my chest, the house was gone. Flattened. In its place stood a sleek modern building with a silver-lettered sign, Jensen Combat Arts. I thought I had the wrong address until I saw his name. Victor. He sold the house. Our house. The one we grew up in. The one our mother fought to keep when Dad walked out. He didn't even tell me. I stood in the parking lot a long time that day, hands shaking with something I couldn't name yet. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure, like I'd never existed. I could have gone in and confronted him right then, could have demanded answers, but I didn't. Instead, I found out they were hiring a night janitor. He didn't recognize me during the interview. That part still stings a little, even now. I guess people change after nearly 2 decades, especially when the last thing they said to each other was screamed over a hospital bed. He looked at me like I was a stranger. I didn't correct him, so I took the job. Put on the uniform. Showed up every night when the place emptied out. I swept mats, scrubbed mirrors, refilled the vending machine with protein bars and overpriced water, and I watched. It didn't take long to see what kind of man Victor had become. He strutted around like a war hero, full of borrowed quotes and loud discipline. He barked at students, especially the women, calling them fragile or uncoachable if they hesitated. His words were sharp but hollow. He didn't teach. He performed. Some of the guys bought into it, hanging on his every word. Others, the quieter ones, looked unsure, but stayed anyway. I saw it in their eyes. Confusion, frustration. Nobody dared speak it aloud. He told stories, mostly half-true ones, about some vague military experience. Never mentioned he washed out of basic, never mentioned who actually served. Not once. And maybe that's when I knew I wouldn't just walk away. Not yet. Not until he was forced to say it. Not for me, but for them. for every student he was leading wrong. Some nights, after closing, I'd mop the mats in silence, remembering how we used to wrestle on the old carpeted floor of our childhood living room. He always wanted to win. I just wanted to survive. Funny how little that's changed, but I didn't come back to punish him. I came back to watch, to wait, to choose the moment when silence would speak louder than rage. And now, that moment is close. I can feel it. Kay Moreno noticed everything. She wasn't loud like some of the others. She didn't brag after sparring matches or crowd around Victor after class, fishing for praise. But her eyes, sharp, deliberate, missed very little. And lately, they'd been on me. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. After all, I'd stayed in the background for weeks, pushing my mop around like I was born for it. I wore the same plain gray hoodie, kept my hair tucked back, never spoke unless spoken to. But something about the way Kay looked at me told me she'd picked up on something. She was curious, maybe even suspicious. It wasn't until the Tuesday night class that everything shifted. Victor had them running a complicated takedown drill, one I'd seen done better in the Corps with half the instructions and twice the risk. Kay was demonstrating the move with a newer student, a tall kid named Devin, who still moved like his limbs hadn't synced to his brain yet. He lost his footing on a pivot, and suddenly Kay's foot slipped out from under her. Her momentum threw her backward. Head angled toward the edge of the mat, no time to catch herself. I was across the room, sweeping near the wall. But before I even realized what I was doing, the broom hit the floor and I was moving. I caught her just before her skull cracked against the hardwood. One hand braced behind her neck, the other under her shoulder, angled perfectly to break the fall. She blinked, stunned. I let her down gently. "You good?" I asked. She nodded, breathless. Yeah, thanks." Victor barked something across the mat, more annoyed about the delay than anything else. Kay stood up and rejoined the drill. But when she passed me again, her gaze lingered a little longer. After class, while I emptied the trash bins near the locker room, she came up behind me. "You've done that before," she said, not asking. I shrugged. Seen enough falls to know when one's coming. She crossed her arms, watching me carefully. "You moved like you knew exactly where I was going to land." I didn't answer, just kept bagging trash. She waited another beat, then said quietly, "You're not just a janitor." Still, I said nothing. She didn't push, just nodded once, then walked away. But from that night on, something changed. Kay started watching me during warm-ups, glancing over when she thought I wasn't looking. And for the first time in years, I felt something small stir in my chest. Recognition, maybe even respect. She didn't know who I was yet, but she would. I lost my coin during a late shift. It slipped out of my back pocket while I was scrubbing down the lockers, but I didn't realize until the next night. It wasn't just any coin, it was a challenge coin. 2nd Battalion, Echo Company, given to me in Fallujah. Not the kind of thing you just misplace. I searched everywhere. Trash cans, laundry bins, even lifted the floor mats. Nothing. 2 nights later, Sarah Lynn, one of the assistant instructors, found it tucked under a bench. She didn't give it back right away. She's not like Victor, louder than he is skilled. Sarah watches, measures. She trains hard and talks little, which is why I liked her, or at least didn't mind her. That night, she waited until the class had cleared out and approached me while I was disinfecting the mirrors. She held out the coin. "Yours?" I looked at it in her palm. For a long moment, I didn't answer. Then I nodded. She didn't move. I looked it up. I paused mid-wipe. "What?" She flipped the coin once in her hand. That unit, that emblem. I thought it looked familiar, so I searched it. Her voice stayed quiet. Found a few articles. One mentioned a Carla Whitmore, gunnery sergeant, medal for valor, hand-to-hand combat specialist, retired after 14 years. I stood there, rag in hand, heart thudding behind my ribs. "I know it's you," she said. We locked eyes through the mirror. Neither of us blinked. "You've been mopping floors while Victor stands in your father's house pretending to be something he's not," she said, like she'd been holding it in. "Why?" I leaned down, picked up the spray bottle, and returned it to the supply cart. She stepped closer. "You could embarrass him in front of the whole class. Expose him in 5 seconds, but you don't." "Because that's not the point," I said quietly. She nodded slowly. "That's what I figured." We stood in silence for a few seconds before she handed me the coin. "You earned this?" He didn't. I took it, and for the first time in years, someone saw me. Later that week, I caught Victor watching me. He didn't say anything, but I noticed it. The way his eyes followed me longer than usual. How he stopped correcting students mid-sentence when I entered the room. His timing was off. His posture stiffer. Something in him had shifted. He didn't know exactly what Sarah knew, but he knew something had changed. He could feel it. A crack in the foundation. And for a man like Victor, built entirely on image and control, a crack was enough to rattle the whole structure. I didn't need to swing a punch. Not yet. All I had to do was keep showing up and wait for the rest to crumble. Sarah didn't waste time. She waited until the students had cleared out, then marched straight into Victor's office like she owned the place. I was in the hallway outside, emptying a trash can, quiet as ever. The door didn't close all the way behind her. "Victor," she said, "we need to talk. It's about Carla." There was a pause. I could hear Victor flipping papers, pretending not to care. "The janitor?" "No, your sister." Another pause. Longer this time. Then a laugh. Dry, dismissive. "You've been on the internet too long." "I'm serious," Sarah snapped. "Her name is Carla Whitmore, gunnery sergeant, 14 years in the Marine Corps. She was a hand-to-hand combat instructor. That's not some guess. I verified it." "She's not my sister," Victor said flatly. "Don't start with that conspiracy crap." "You built this whole place on a lie," Sarah said. "You act like you clawed your way up from nothing, but you sold your family's house. You erased your own blood to build this dojo, and now she's here, cleaning your toilets." "I don't owe her anything," he shot back, louder now. "She left. She disappeared." "She served," Sarah said, "while you were here printing t-shirts with your name on them." Victor didn't answer. From where I stood in the hallway, I could hear the air shift, like the silence had its own weight. "You knew she was alive," Sarah said, "and you never said a word." He didn't deny it. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, letting the words hang. She was right, of course. Victor hadn't forgotten me. He'd buried me. He scrubbed my name from the deed, packed up our mother's old photos, painted over every piece of our childhood like it had never happened. The dojo wasn't just a business. It was a monument to the version of him that didn't include me. And now that version was cracking. Sarah's voice dropped to a near whisper. "You didn't just erase her. You rewrote yourself." Victor finally spoke again, quiet but sharp. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know enough." He slammed something, maybe a drawer, and stormed out of the office. I stepped back into the shadows of the hall just as he passed by. He didn't see me, but I saw everything. Sarah came out a minute later. She spotted me this time. Standing there, mop in hand, same as always. She didn't say a word, just gave the faintest nod. That was enough. Something had shifted in the air that week, in the way the students moved, glanced around, whispered at the water fountain. They didn't know what was coming, but they felt it. And so did Victor. It started with a joke, at least that's what Victor thought it was. "Hey," he said, smirking in front of the Thursday night class. "Maybe we should let the janitor redeem herself. One clean sweep, huh?" Some of the students laughed, some didn't. There'd been a shift lately, and he could feel it, even if he didn't understand it. I stepped forward. "I'm in," I said, loud enough for every person in that dojo to hear. "But if I win, you tell them the truth." A pause, then more laughter, nervous this time, unsure. Kay looked at me with narrowed eyes. Sarah stood quietly off to the side, arms folded, watching everything like a storm about to break. Victor raised an eyebrow. "You serious?" I nodded. "Fine," he said, stepping onto the mat. "Let's show them what hard work looks like." I took off the hoodie, stepped out of my boots, and walked barefoot across the floor. The room fell into complete silence. I could feel the tension behind me like heat. I stood across from him. No rank on my sleeve, no title, just me. He bounced lightly on his feet, cracking his neck. "Don't worry, I'll go easy." I didn't answer. The bell rang. Victor lunged first, fast, flashy, wide movements meant to intimidate. I didn't move, just shifted, redirecting his weight. His foot slid out from under him for a moment, and he had to reset. He came in again, tighter this time. A jab to the chest, a feint to the left. I caught his wrist and stepped inside his range. No strike, just a calm counter. His arm bent awkwardly behind his back before he yanked it free. More murmurs from the students. Sarah didn't blink. Kay was already leaning forward, breath caught in her throat. Victor was sweating now. His movements lost their rhythm. His eyes darted, not just watching me, but searching me, like something was slipping through the cracks of a memory he didn't want to see. He broke away. "You're holding back," he muttered. "No," I said softly. "I'm holding you up." Another beat passed. Then I stepped forward. "You remember Mom's last week in the hospital?" I said, not loud, but the whole room heard it. "How you said you were too busy with your business plan to visit? That she wouldn't remember anyway?" Victor's hands dropped just a little. I kept going. "She left me a note, said not to worry about you. That one day you'd remember where you came from." He blinked, swallowed. She was wrong. Victor charged, reckless this time. I sidestepped and swept his leg, catching him before he hit the mat. I eased him down gently, the same way I'd caught Kay weeks earlier. I stood. "You lost," I said, voice level. "Now tell them the truth." He didn't speak. Not yet, but his silence told them more than he ever had. By morning, the video was everywhere, a shaky recording posted by some student in the back row. No fancy editing. Just raw footage of a janitor calmly dismantling the dojo's founder in front of 30 silent witnesses. The caption read, "She didn't even hit him once." Within a day, it had 100,000 views. By the end of the week, 5 million. I still showed up for my shift that night. Same uniform, same mop. Nobody laughed this time. Sarah greeted me at the door, handing me a fresh pair of gloves like it was ceremony. "They're still talking about it," she said, nodding toward the main floor. "They'll be talking about it for a long time." I gave her a small nod and started toward the mats. Kay met me halfway. "You really don't want to say anything?" I shook my head. "They'll figure it out." And they did. Slowly. Victor didn't show up for the next few classes. When he finally did, he didn't speak, just sat on the bench at the far wall while Sarah led warm-ups. The weight in his shoulders looked heavier, like something in him had finally cracked open, and he didn't know how to hold it anymore. Some of the students left. Most stayed. A few whispered in corners, or watched me like I was a puzzle they'd missed the first 100 pieces to. I kept cleaning. I still arrived early, still swept the entryway, still unclogged the sinks when someone dropped too much paper towel into the drain. But then something started happening. A small group of students began asking questions, not about the match, but about focus, breathing, fear. They didn't want to fight better. They wanted to think clearer. I didn't answer much at first, just handed them a chair and asked them to sit, to be still, to breathe through the discomfort, not past it. Sarah noticed. So did Kay. A week later, Sarah called it something. "Carla's mental defense class," she said, half joking, but the name stuck. Soon we were using the back room on Tuesdays. No mats, no pads, just quiet questions. Reflection. A small circle of students learning how to sit with themselves. Victor never came in, but he watched through the window sometimes. He never interrupted, not once. Word started spreading. People from outside the dojo asked to sit in. Veterans, students from other schools. One even drove in from St. Louis. I didn't advertise, I didn't charge, I didn't call it teaching, but somehow that's what it became. The dojo changed, not overnight, but enough to notice. Less ego, less noise. More people staying after class to ask real questions, not just how to throw a better punch, and through it all, I kept mopping the floor, kept emptying the bins, because I wasn't trying to rise above anything. I was just finally standing where I was always meant to be. A few months later, Kay invited me to see a new space. "It's Victor's," she said, unlocking the door to what looked like a repurposed bike shop on the east side of town. Kind of a different project. I stepped inside, no framed photos of Victor on the wall, no giant banners or slogans about domination or grit, just a clean, open mat, soft lighting, a few simple chairs pushed along the edge. The mirrors were small, no trophies, no spotlights. There was a chalkboard near the door with one phrase written in blocky handwriting. "Respect starts in silence." Kay folded her arms, watching me scan the room. He's been working on it with Sarah, women-only classes, focused on confidence, boundaries, self-defense without the show. I walked the mat once, running my fingers along the edge of the padding. It felt quiet, real. "Why here?" I asked. "He didn't say," she replied, "but I think he wanted a place without his name stamped all over it." I nodded once. Smart. Victor wasn't there when I visited, but I saw signs of him. A worn pair of trainers in the corner, a notepad with drills written in messy block letters. His presence was here, just not loud. Sarah joined us 10 minutes later, carrying a box of hand wraps. "He told us to build it however we wanted," she said. "Didn't even ask to put his name on the door." That surprised me. Victor used to stamp his initials on water bottles. Kay laughed a little. He shows up early, cleans the bathrooms himself, won't let us do it. I raised an eyebrow. He said if you could mop the floor for a year, he could manage a toilet or two. That stopped me, not because it made everything okay, but because it meant something had shifted. I didn't need an apology. I didn't expect one. I wasn't looking for closure through words. I never was. Victor didn't speak to me after the match, not directly, but now walking through this small, quiet space he'd helped create. Not for show, not for profit, but for purpose, I finally understood. This was the apology. Unspoken. Lived. I looked at Kay and Sarah, standing side by side in the center of the room. Both steady, both strong. Their voices would carry farther than mine ever could. You two are ready, I said. Sarah nodded, not in agreement, but in gratitude. Because you were first. I didn't correct her. I stepped to the door, looked back one more time, and smiled. He didn't say sorry, but he changed, and sometimes that's enough. The mop still creaks a little when I push it across the floor. I never fix the handle. Something about that quiet resistance feels right, like the work still matters. It's early. The dojo's empty, sun leaking in through the front windows, dust dancing in the light. My favorite time of day. I stop in the middle of the mat and pull the mop to a rest. From the bench, my old Marine badge stares back at me from the wall. Sarah had it framed and hung near the shoe rack. She didn't ask permission, just did it. At first, I thought about taking it down. Felt too loud, but I left it. Not as a statement, just as truth. Students come earlier now. Some arrive with notebooks. Some just sit quietly and breathe. A few ask questions when I'm sweeping. Not about rank or technique, but about patience. Pain. How to stand still when everything inside you wants to run. They call me Miss Carla, or just Carla. Never ma'am, never coach. I don't correct them. Kay teaches most evenings now. Sarah helps run the backroom classes. Victor still keeps his distance. I see him sometimes through the window, driving by slow. He never stops, but I don't need him to. He changed. That's enough. The dojo isn't perfect, but it's no longer about being the strongest in the room. It's about becoming something better, quieter, steadier, and I guess so am I. Most nights I still close the place down myself, still wipe the mirrors, still lock the back door twice. Not because I have to, but because the routine calms my mind, keeps me grounded. There's power in choosing to stay still, in listening before speaking, in walking away from a fight, not because you're afraid, but because you've already won what matters. Some people think strength is loud. It isn't. I sit on the bench beneath the badge now, close my eyes, let the silence stretch. And I'm not here for recognition. I'm not here to be remembered. I'm here because peace is something you build, one quiet moment at a time. And this place, this floor, this breath, this silence is mine. Finally,